Hi, I'm Murphy. This is my channel, Murphy's Every Whim, where I talk to you about books because I have no one else to talk about books with. And so that's what I'm here for today. It's afternoon. That's when I always am videoing. It's the best time for my brain. And I have actually made notes this time that I can see right here, so I hope that this helps eliminate some of the semantic paraphasia that I tend to have when I'm just doing things from memory. All right, so I want to talk about the books that I've read so far this May and the books that I'm currently reading. First on the list is Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. Oh, why did I read this? I actually listened to it. The narrator's voice was syrupy and childish and overly dramatic. So it was a bad read to begin with, and then the story was just over the top. So Flowers in the Attic came out when I was a sophomore in college, and so my sister, who's 5 years younger than I am, it was exactly the right age for those teenage girls who read this book. And I know that she read it. I saw it in her bedroom, and I remember at the time, my parents had a used bookstore. It was never a very good used bookstore, but it was a place where people could come drop off books and then pick up other books. And I know there were multiple copies of Flowers in the Attic in the bookstore. But I didn't read it at the time, and so many people had referred to it recently on BookTube in some way or another that I thought that I should read it, and so I did. I also, after I was through with it, I read the synopses of the subsequent books in the series, and I have no need to read any of them. It's just a soap opera in book form, and so that's enough of that. It's a book that I am both glad that I read, so I know what people are talking about now when they mention it, but wish I hadn't read. The next book on the list is actually a play. It's The Odd Couple by Neil Simon. And I like reading plays, and I like Neil Simon particularly. The Odd Couple is a play that I haven't actually seen. While I was reading it, and I read it on paper, while I was reading it, I was trying to imagine Jack Klugman and Tony Randall, the actors who were in the sitcom. I was imagining their voices as I read it. But this particular copy refers to the Broadway show that starred Walter Matthau and Art Harding, but I couldn't picture them in my mind as I was reading it. It was a fun little read. It is nice to know the origin story of the sitcom, and it was short. I thought shorter than a lot of plays that I've seen. It doesn't take that long to read a play, but this seemed to be pretty short. But it was fun. The next book is The Call of the Wild by Jack London. And I actually listened to this even though I have the book. Couldn't remember that I had the book when I was listening to it. So I listened to it. The reason I wanted to read this book was because I finished not too long ago, in April I think, The Incredible Journey, and I wanted another book narrated by a dog, and so Buck fit the bill. But also in this book, I know mushers. I have not actually been on a dog sled because it's not ever worked out that I've been there when there was enough snow on the ground and dogs were available. My sister and her husband have sled dogs, and they have family who have sled dogs, so I know mushers. And I've spent time in British Columbia and the Yukon Territory in the places, some of the places mentioned in the book. And so that was fun. I thought it was a good adventure story. I really enjoyed it. It had a nice beginning, several chapters. Clearly it was serialized, and then a satisfying end, which I think a lot of modern authors struggle with the end. They have a good premise, they develop good characters, they have some action, and then it just goes to pot at the end. But this one had a satisfying end. I thought there were a few exaggerations. For instance, the low temperatures that it mentioned, unless they're including wind chill, which I guess Jack London would have a concept of wind chill, that the temperatures listed were lower than the temperatures that actually happened. And the other thing was the narrator mispronounced Tanninol, and I had to shake my head a little. But other than that, it was a really enjoyable listen and read. Another book that I completed in May, and I think I had completed this book before, but on Audible it said it was unfinished. But the book is The Stranger in the Woods by Michael Finkel, and the subtitle is The Story of the Last True Hermit. So in 1986, Christopher Knight left his home, drove to the Maine woods, and disappeared. His family didn't know where he was for 27 years. And for that 27 years, he lived in the woods. He built himself a camp. And he didn't have a conversation with another human being for 27 years. He did run across a hiker once and he said hi, but that was the only conversation he had with anybody at all. And he lived by scavenging off of other people. He stole stuff. There were houses around. He built his camp in a place that was hidden, and he made sure that people, he camouflaged things as well as he could. But then he broke into homes and local camp in the area to steal all the things that he needed. He walked into the woods with nothing. And after 27 years, he had a camp that he could live in. He never lit a fire. He always cooked on a stove, and so he had to have propane. Anyway, all of his needs he met by stealing. So this book tells the story of Christopher Knight's life before, during, and after his time in the woods. But it also talks about the history of hermits and people who have closed themselves off from society. Michael Finkel's a journalist and a writer. Thought that I really enjoyed the book, but my heart ached for Chris Knight. Clearly not neurotypical, and when he came out of the woods, when he was arrested he was caught stealing. He was arrested. My heart ached for what he had to go through to live in society again. But great book. I highly recommend it. In fact, The Call of the Wild and Stranger in the Woods, I highly recommend. Fight Club by Chuck Palahnuik. I've made a video about this, and so I'm not going to talk about it more, but I'm also glad I read it and not glad that I read it. In fact, there's two books, Flowers in the Attic and Fight Club, that I thought, well, Fight Club I thought was a good book, but I didn't enjoy it. Flowers in the Attic, not a good book. All right, so those are the books that I completed so far. Books that I'm currently reading. I'm reading Notes from the Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I'm about halfway through, and I'm having to depend on analyses to help me understand it to some extent. One of the reasons I'm reading this is it was mentioned in Finkel's book. He quoted from this several times. Another book I'm reading is Female Husbands by Manion. Manion is a historian. The book is set between the 18th century and early 20th century. In this book, Manion looks at the lives of various people in both England and the colonies and early United States. People who were assigned female at birth, who lived at least part of their lives as a man. And she not only talks about these people and their lives, but she does it with historical analysis. And so she looks at the sources, both court cases and documents and newspaper articles, but also fictionalized accounts of these people's lives. And she analyzes those in terms of the socioeconomic and political climates for each of the stories and each of the places. And she looks at what words are used, how those words are used, and what that might have meant. It's gotten some not great reviews, probably because people are wanting this to be more pop science, that it's, I don't know, written more gently. But this is written, it might have been intended that way, but it's really written as a historical analysis. And so I'm enjoying it. Some people didn't like it for that reason. I'm about 3/4 of the way through. I'm eager to see, there's going to be some World War I stories in here, and I'm eager to see what those are going to be about. Anyway, so I'm enjoying that so far. Another book, Prevalence of Witches by Aubrey Menen. I love Aubrey Menen. He wrote satire, and A Prevalence of Witches is set in a fictional state in India during, I believe, the 1930s, but there's British rule, and it's supposed to be a murder mystery as well, but I haven't gotten to that part of it. And but I love Menen's satire. And then finally, I'm reading some elementary French short stories. I'm about a first-year college level French reader, and so that's the level of short stories that I'm reading, and it's in a book that also has like lists of vocabulary and things like that to help me as a reader. And so I'm hoping to work up to more like sophomore level books soon, I hope. All right, so that's what I have read this month, and that's what I am reading, and I have enjoyed telling you about this and talking about the good, the bad, the ugly, and I will see you next time. I'm hoping to do the new booktuber tag. I've done it, but that video was so bad I have to scrap it and start over. and I hope to have that out soon. So, goodbye and take care.